What's up, Whisper Nation? Long time no see, but your favorite fantasy football tag team is back today for episode 91 of the Fantasy Whispers, and it starts right now.
Yes, we're back again. We're back again.
Hey, let's pump up the volume.
Right here.
What's up, Whisper Nation? It's Monday, February 10th, and you're listening to episode 91 of the Fantasy Whispers podcast with your host, Johnny Game Time Hicks, and your boy, Big Travie. If you want to follow the show, you can do so on Twitter at TF Whispers. You can also follow us on YouTube and Instagram at The Fantasy Whispers, and you got to get over to the website to thefantasywhispers.com. We've got all that swag up on the website for you there, as well as some of our archived articles and videos. And of course, new for 2019 and heading into 2020 is our Patreon account. You can help support our show by going to www.patreon.com and searching the Fantasy Whispers today. Johnny Game Time Hicks. We are back in the saddle, dude.
This feels so good to finally get back on the mics. What did they say? The ones and twos?
The ones and twos,
the
yeah.
ones and twos.
Absolutely. So we're here. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to start our off-season schedule, which really just means we're going to jump into our Dynasty format and some of our Dynasty stuff. But I really wanted to talk to Whisper Nation today, Johnny. Really come clean about a couple things that happened in 2019. Really just set the record straight and really just get excited for 2020. So without further ado, let's jump into that right now, Johnny. We here at the Fantasy Whispers started this show based on our hometown league, our league of record, if you will. It's called The Only League That Matters, Toltem for short. We started this podcast because our infatuation with that league, our desire to continuously talk about fantasy football, and really the community that we had built within that 12-person league. Johnny can speak to this. We draft in different locations every year. We have a close-knit family. We do not allow a lot of outsiders around this sacred draft weekend because it's very special and dear to us. It is from that exclusive inclusivity that we have created with Toltem that we made the Fantasy Whispers with a community-based platform in mind. But last year, we didn't feel like we brought that to you. We continue to try to be something we're not, something we claimed we weren't, and that was experts in the fantasy football industry. And so, Johnny, I just want to apologize to Whisper Nation today because we failed you last year, and we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to try and be something we're not. We're going to bring you best and the worst of fantasy football, the reaction, the joy, the pain, the sorrow, and we're going to bring it to you in a realness that is not matched out there in the industry. And so I hope that you'll continue with us on this journey. You'll tell us what you want to see, what you don't want to see, what you want to hear, what you don't want to hear, and you'll help us grow this into the biggest fantasy football community that we can make it be, and help me and Johnny bring you amazing content each and every time.
Yeah, definitely. We love hearing from Whisper Nation. They are very supportive. You guys have always been there for us, and we want to reciprocate that, but we also want to be true to ourselves. And I think that with this new kind of format, we will be able to be true to ourselves, but also be true to you guys. And, it's not to say that we aren't going to bring any more fantasy, advice or anything like that. It's just going to come from what we see from the industry, which is what we always have done, throughout our, fantasy football careers. We always talk the stuff that we talk amongst ourselves and in our Toltem group based on what we research and what we look up. And that's where we want to be true to. We want to bring those conversations to light and talk those topics and not necessarily just give you guys stats upon stats, because those weren't as exciting, and that's not why we play. We don't play because of the stats. We play because of the community and the camaraderie, the competitiveness and all that. And that's what we want to bring to our show. That's who we are. We are the Fantasy Whisperers. And so we're looking forward to our this new, outlook and really trying to be true to ourselves. So we hope like Travis said, that you will remain with us. We will still be giving really good content and giving advice. It's just going to come from a little bit different of a place.
Yeah, it's kind of like coming back home. It's not exactly a comeback, if you will. It's just kind of getting on the same page of what we're, staying true to us and staying true to what we love to do. And so that means we're going to keep bringing you that content. And part of that content, me and Johnny put together, we got together, we said, what are we going to do from now until kind of the draft and getting into the, the off season. And I know people are still kind of itching for fantasy football if they're playing Dynasty. And me and Johnny took a few buddies from the Toltem, the Only League That Matters group, and a few buddies that we knew liked Dynasty or liked the concept of Dynasty football. And last year we created our first Dynasty League together called the Dynasty Whisperers, aptly named after our podcast here. So the Dynasty Whispers is a league we want to make public in a sense that we want people to see what is going on within this league, because we want to grow the Dynasty subset of players as well within fantasy football. Johnny, right now we're looking at an estimated 59.3 million people that play fantasy sports in the United States and Canada alone. And each player is spending about $556 per year on league entry fees. We know this is a gigantic industry. We know that people are searching for how to do this year long. We know, from the success of the fantasy footballers who are a year-long podcast, we knew that you could be a year-long podcast in this industry, but what would make you do that? And I think that Dynasty is a good facet to get into. And so today, Johnny, I just want to talk a little bit about Dynasty football. In this Dynasty Whispers League, though, I had to put this belt up here because I won Toltem, Johnny. I was able to win the Only League That Matters here, but I got dead last in Dynasty. So just to peel back the curtain again and to show you guys, we're still figuring all this out too. I am admittedly the turd champion in Dynasty. Nobody eats shit like me in the Dynasty Whispers, that's for sure.
Well, and I didn't follow you. I was also in the bottom, in the Turd Bowl tournament. They say I did end up winning that, which was nice. I'm making some moves, but it is completely different to us. Like Travis said, we had never been in a Dynasty League. Everyone in our community was saying you got to get into the Dynasty world, and so we made the leap. And today we'll share some of the things that we learned in our first year, what we want to accomplish in the next year. But I am really looking forward to this draft, Travis, because we will be posting this video in there, the whole lottery that we had last week. What's going on, Whisper Nation? Just jumping on here. So it is Super Bowl Sunday. We will have things up and posted for Super Bowl Sunday in just a little bit. But first, this is why I'm so excited for today. It is our Dynasty Draft Lotto. First year for rookies, so we're excited about this. We're only doing the top 4 picks in this draft lotto, so we're going to get into it right now. So what's going to happen, I've got 4 balls in here. We got a number 1, we've got a number 3 ball, we have in memory of Kobe Bryant, we got an 8, and we have a 24. All right, so I will mix these up. I will draw these out one at a time, label them with the 4 people who have a possibility to get a top 4 pick: Travis, Brett Zabo, Chelsea, and me. And then once we have those names drawn to a number, I will drop them in the Game Time Draft Lotto machine here, turn it on, and the order of the balls that come out will go from 4, 3, 2, and then the number 1 overall pick. So here we go. So drawing out, these are for who gets what ball. So this one will be for Travis. This ball is for Travis. He is the number 8. Drop it right in there. Write it down here. Travis gets the number 8 ball. Kobe Bryant, 8. Good one. I wanted that one. Not gonna lie. All right, next one is Zabo. Zabo gets the number 24. The 2 Lakers fan get the 2 Kobe Bryant numbers. Good for them. So 24. Next we'll do Chelsea. Chelsea gets the number 3 ball, which means that I have the number 1 ball. All right, so we'll turn on the machine and decide our fate. All right, again, this is for the number 4 pick in the draft. Oh, number 4 pick goes to me. That sucks. Although I deserve that one. All right, I have the number 4 overall pick. Next one. Number 3, Chelsea, going in order of finish so far. So right now, top 2 picks are still available, Travis and Zabo, the 2 Kobe Bryant numbers. And the number 2 pick goes to Big Travie. He gets the number 2 pick, which means that Zabo gets the, let's see, trying to figure this out. I think you guys get the idea. Brett Zabo, number 1. I'll show you the number in there. Number 24. So Brett Zabo has the number 1 overall pick. Big Travie, number 2. But what's awesome is I have the number 1 overall pick because I traded for that pick. Way to go! But all right, so Zabo, number 1. Travis, number 2. Chelsea, number 3. And me, number 4. I ended up with the number 4 overall pick. Big Travie ended up with the number 2 overall pick in our rookie draft. And then I had also traded George Kittle because I have Mark Andrews as well. And I saw the value of George Kittle was a little bit greater as far as what other fantasy owners had what they expect and think about George Kittle. So I ended up trading. I took a little bit of gamble before the draft, and I traded Kittle to an owner that also owned a top 4 draft pick. We didn't know where it was going to land, and luckily enough, it paid off for me, and I landed the number 1 overall pick. So now I have the number 1, the number 4, and then I also traded for the number 5 overall pick. So I'm really looking forward to this rookie draft, Travis, hoping that I can really start stacking my team in this draft. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, so just for those that may have not played Dynasty before, Johnny's done a lot of work here for his situation here to kind of tell you a little bit about his team. But if you're not familiar, Dynasty is a format in which you're going to keep a subset or literally most of your roster for years on end. The core is going to stay intact, or you have the opportunity to keep that core intact. You could obviously do things like trade and move players away, but unlike a redraft league, like many of you probably play in, this is a league in which you're going to keep players year after year. So, things become a little more important. The age of players becomes really important. Career length comes into play, where you might see wide receivers valued a little bit more because their career length is longer than that, say, of a running back. If you can land a really top-notch Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson young quarterback, you're feeling good about the state of your franchise, if you will, because you're going to be able to, like other franchises in the NFL, you're going to be able to be set up for a while with these players. So unless you're like me, who drafted Cam Newton and Ben Roethlisberger last year, I waited on quarterback because I wanted to stack young players. Did not work out because some of the young players I stacked weren't really quite ready to take that leap into the NFL just yet. So there are pitfalls in this strategy as well that you just have to monitor. And I think the biggest thing, Johnny, and what we'll get into a little bit today, is rookies. And because after you do your startup draft, you Your first draft ever in Dynasty is going to be a draft that includes all the rookies and all the players available, right? And that's how we drafted last year for the Dynasty Whispers. Johnny, we did our draft in August.
Yeah, we did our very first draft in August because we wanted to get the most up-to-date information on our very first draft because we knew it was the foundation to our entire league. So we waited until August to make our drafts the first year, but this year we will have them shortly after the NFL draft because we will only be doing rookies. So it'll be a little bit better for us too, timing-wise, because at the end of the summer, as most of Whisper Nation knows, there is a lot of leagues that we are in, and there are a lot of drafts that we have to attend. And so this is going to be fun because it also moves up that whole experience to, a month where otherwise we would just be like, oh, these new rookies came in. What are they going to do? It's all speculation. But you're not super, super interested in it unless the top key players. Whereas now it's a little bit more fun because, we have another draft and it's earlier. So we can just focus on that.
Yeah, I do like that point, Johnny. Your startup draft is a lot of pressure, right? Because it's your first draft and you're saddled to these guys. And that's the other thing about building this dynasty league, right? It was a meticulous process me and Johnny went through. Well, two reasons why. One, we had the only league that matters, right? We had this other league that was very sacred to us, very special to us. We didn't necessarily want to try and pull any value away from that league by building a dynasty league, which, we know that the only league that matters will last forever. We know that based on what the people we have in it and what we like to do and the way we love fantasy football. And we know Dynasty is supposed to last forever. And so when you're competing with these two ideas, it was very tough for us to build this process. So not only in a Dynasty league do you want to be very meticulous about who you select just in any Dynasty league, but we wanted to be a little extra special because we had other leagues that we were in that we didn't want to pull away attention from. And I have to say, Johnny, after a year of doing this, I feel like we've stayed in our lanes in both leagues. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we are very tuned in to what we need to do in each league. And so I'm very proud of what we've done in the Dynasty Whispers. I'm proud of the group we have together. I'm going to be proud of the way that we come together and make the new rules and stuff. But I think when you're setting this dynasty league up, you have that first draft, your startup draft, and it's a lot of pressure. But then now we come into a whole new animal as we talk about with these rookies because you're essentially an NFL scout, GM, coach, all balled into one, trying to make your decisions about your roster here. And I think it's a really important thing to note because what makes a good rookie or a prospect. And for me, I think there's three key facets into picking a rookie. One, you've got to know names. You got to know the name value of guys, their program they're in, hypes up their name. If people have been talking about them, if they were talking about him 2 years ago, but maybe he had a bad senior year, you got to kind of keep your ear to the grindstone on that and kind of think that up. Two is talent. Obviously, that is what's going to transcend above name, transcend above situation, and really boost your prospect into the next level if he's got that talent. And then third and finally, is that, in fact, situation, his landing spot? Mm-hmm. Where will he go? And, trying to look at the landing spots.
It's kind of funny, Travis, because since I do have so many, first-round picks, I've been really kind of glued to a lot of where these, mock drafts, like the Todd McShay mock drafts, and I've been really glued to them for the first time, in a long time. Normally, I just will kind of keep an eye on, the Cardinals and, maybe where they land. I'll a couple of the top guys, I'll worry about where they land, maybe, because they could have some immediate fantasy impact, right? But it's funny now that, we're really diving in and we really have to make decisions not only that are a year long, like that are going to affect our dynasty team for the future. And it's funny because you look at some of these mock drafts and I will literally click off of them because I'll be like, Jerry Jeudy to Oakland? Yeah, I don't like that fit as much, or like, and so I ended up, I'll go to another mock draft and see where they have him and be like, And so it's kind of funny how your whole perspective kind of changes based on what you have, what you kind of are looking for, what you would want, what your ideal situation is. So it's a lot of fun. It really is an experience that is so different than what we have experienced to this point.
Yeah, and I think, we're obviously still learning here. We have an idea of, Johnny's talking about what he's looking at as far as massaging these mock drafts, so to speak. So I think there is that situation of like what I think should happen, but then there's the draft. It's going to happen. You're going to see the landing spots, and then it's a quick turnaround of about a month till May when you're drafting your rookies. And so this is going to be a very touch and go situation. But I think today, what I really wanted to dive into a little bit is the name, the talent, the situation, and keep those things in your mind. Situation being the third for a reason because you don't know it yet, but having a great idea of which teams would be great landing spots for a wide receiver, for a running back, based on roster manipulation, for a quarterback, based on wide receivers that are on your team that maybe need a quarterback. Maybe you're sitting on Terry McLaurin and you're like, is Dwayne Haskins the answer, or will Washington go for another quarterback? You're looking at Miami and some of the talent that they have, Devontae Parker, some of the guys that are on their team, and you're saying, well, they could use a quarterback, if we could get somebody in there. So is Tua the answer for a Devontae Parker owner in Dynasty? We don't know, but we can kind of forecast as much as we can prior to the draft. But I think the important thing now is to watch tape, watch film. And I don't just mean what you're going to do first. And I think this is a good get your feet wet when you're looking at tape. And look, I'm not an expert at looking at tape. I just started looking at tape really in the last 2 years as far as college players coming in because we were getting ready for the podcast. But I will tell you, I saw some things on tape that really made me excited for players like Miles Sanders last year, players like Darrell Henderson last year, because you could see things on tape that you see and you're like, oh, yes, this looks like a talent. And then, kind of the vice versa there. With Miles Sanders, it kind of translated a little bit in the NFL. With Darrell Henderson, it did not translate as much as we thought. So there is two sides of the coin. But I think the important thing with watching film, Johnny, is not to just watch the highlight tapes that get made here, because that's really just going to show you their best plays.
Right.
Try to Google these players and different years that they played and see if you can get packages of a bunch of their film cut up together.
The good, the
YouTube,
bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. You want to do it all because that's really going to give you an idea of what you can do or what they can do and what they can do on the field. So I think that's a good point. And then the other thing is obviously the situation. So what I did is kind of, I'm looking at some of these spots that are intriguing that are in the top 10. You look at the New York Giants, who are loaded on offense. What are they going to do? They'll probably go. A lot of these teams are going to go linemen, I think.
Yeah,
and linemen or defense, and that's fine. But when you get into some of these players, Johnny mentioned the Oakland Raiders. What are they going to do at wide receiver? We know they traded away Amari Cooper. Do you like a wide receiver going there with Derek Carr? I don't know if you do. But there are other interesting ones like the New York Jets, who have a Sam Darnold. Maybe they get a wide receiver. We know that
maybe they get maybe they're crazy because it's Adam Gase and they drafted him.
Yeah, I was just going to say we know that Adam Gase is talking crap on Le'Veon Bell.
Dude, did you see the interview after it was literally right after the season, and there was a reporter that had asked, they were like, will Le'Veon Bell be your running back next year? And he was like, that's not a question for me, that's a question for the GM. He's under contract for 2 years. And it's like, I don't understand what his beef is so much with Le'Veon Bell. Like, I don't understand it. It's so funny to me.
Literally, you could just look at Adam Gase, and he's got a beef with every running back that he's ever had. He just continues to have that. And then you look at guys like Kenyon Drake go off to Arizona and actually prove his worth. So it's just kind of funny. And that's what we're talking about with situation. Understanding what these coaches want to do, what they've historically wanted to do, and what they're capable of doing. And so, look, I mean, there's some great teams here that could use running back help. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are at 14, and in a Bruce Arians offense, they could use running back help. And that guy could easily be a top 10 running back if he's got the moves. And so you look at some of the guys that are able to fall there, or even, outside of, a lot of what happens with running backs, you'll find that they go in the second and third and fourth and fifth rounds because things are a little bit more scarce at other positions as far as offensive linemen, teams that are quarterback hungry. It's a foregone conclusion that Joe Burrow I guess we could call him Smoking Joe Burrow now that he's
Yeah.
just puffing on cigars.
Dude, that's like all he does. That's his main thing.
Yeah,
Smoking cigars.
dude, that guy's such a pimp, dude. Like
Dude,
I cannot believe the little boy that he looks like, but he's just such a man on the football field. That
oh,
dude's
I know.
just like
It's insane.
chucking bombs. I just hope that Cincinnati does not ruin him. But he'll be a hot name in your rookie drafts, and you'll have to understand, if you're like me, who you're rostering right now before cuts, you're rostering Eli Manning, who just retired, Cam Newton, who's hurt, and Ben Roethlisberger, who's either close to retirement or hurt himself. So maybe you're looking at a Joe Burrow, and maybe you're saying, okay, what's it worth? And you've just got to maneuver based on your team needs. So, but you also look at the NFL team needs that are around there. And I'm really excited to dive into the tape. I think by the time we talk next time, Johnny, we'll be able to kind of bring some of our favorite guys within the top 5 to 10 in running backs, rookies, wide receivers, and why. Some of the story behind them. That's always my favorite with football is some of these stories. You look at Joe Burrow, who was a transfer, who everybody wrote off, had a horrible career. Well, not horrible, but not great.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just torched the field this year. You look at Tua. He will be battling some scary injuries, some scary medicals coming into the draft. Where does he land? How long do teams wait on Tua? I think now he's got the benefit of being in a league that medical has gone so far in this league that you could be very accurate about what's going on with those players. So there's a lot to think about there.
Well, and
there's
also,
some interesting
one of the
free agents.
Yeah,
go ahead.
there are some really interesting free agents, but also you were talking about how running backs tend to go in the second, third, fourth, and fifth, and I think that what we are seeing is a complete shift in that does bring up one of my major points that I learned about fantasy football dynasty fantasy football is just how short of a window these top running backs are in. I looked up 2 years ago, Travis, I looked up the top 25 running backs for 2 years ago. And there are only, out of the top 25 that finished 2 years ago, there are only 6 that are still relevant and be top 20 running backs in this upcoming draft that are ranked that way. So that is such a high turnover rate. And a lot of these, franchises are looking at these running backs and saying they're pretty expendable. I mean, look at the Arizona Cardinals situation. 2 years ago, we were talking about David Johnson and Todd Gurley as being the top 2 running backs for their franchises, like in the league. And now you're looking at fast forward to today, and you've got the LA Rams. I'm sure Big Travie can attest to this on sports radio in LA. They're saying, what are we doing with Todd Gurley? Are they going to cut him? They owe him a lot. They're not using him. They're supposed to actually have a conversation with Todd Gurley in the upcoming day. He's owed like a $7 million roster bonus. And then over here in Arizona, there was a tweet that was like a misinformed tweet about the Cardinals releasing David Johnson, but they're not going to actually just release him. It would be too much of a cap hit. But they're
Send
saying
him to Tampa Bay.
I would love that.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, right.
I have him.
Yeah. But it's just it's crazy how fast these guys just turn over, and you don't notice it.
To speak to that point, Johnny, the average career length in the NFL is 3.3 years, right? But then you look at running backs, it's 2.57 years. This is the biggest turnover in the NFL, the shortest career span in the NFL. And look, this is a violent game. We get why. These guys are literally lining up 20 to 30 times a game and getting pounded by these defensive backs to the tune of basically a car wreck each time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at this and you're saying, oh gosh, this is kind of brutal. And then you're watching the NFL adapt. You're watching guys like Kenyon Drake get in here and getting worked on second and third down, or Chase Edmonds coming in to speak to your Arizona Cardinals and getting worked on second and third down, catching passes. You're doing what the Patriots have been doing for a lot of years and working in multiple backs. And so as a fantasy owner, you're going, oh my God, no, please don't do that. Like, I want the bell cow.
Right.
But honestly, you can maneuver, you can vibe and ebb and flow with the NFL and maneuver around the way that they're doing it. I think the best way to do that is to build a core around the other positions if you're feeling comfortable enough to do that. And that means wide receivers. And so to kind of jump to that wide receiver category, Johnny, what I found was I didn't personally put enough stock in my wide receiver core to start the year, and I probably should have drafted a little more wide receiver because I went 1 and 2. I went Dalvin Cook and David Johnson. Now Dalvin Cook was a stud, and he carried my team to what little wins I did get. But then David Johnson, the issue that have there, 3 different running backs turned through Arizona this year and all flashed their own kind of brilliance, except for David Johnson. And I think, instead I waited on wide receiver and tried to draft, Marquise Brown and and Christian Kirk and some of these guys that are on my team. And I think that they have bright futures. I think that Christian Kirk will be good. I really think Marquise Brown could be special in this league.
Yeah.
But I think, I should have put a little more weight in those first 4 rounds in wide receiver, and I think I'd be sitting here a little bit better. And I think that's because the NFL's changing a little bit, Johnny. The rules now, the NFL did a study a couple years ago, and they found that if the quarterback got hurt on a team, the viewership went significantly down for that team. And so what did the NFL say? Quarterbacks getting hurt equals less money for us. We're going to go ahead and change the rules of the NFL and allow for it to be a more pass-happy, down-the-field league. And honestly, the product is better because of it. I do enjoy a good defensive running back battle, but we like these shootouts that are happening as well. And I think that puts an emphasis on wide receivers, tight ends, pass catchers, quarterbacks, all those things. And I think those are the careers that are going to last longer. And in Dynasty, that is probably how you have to build your.
Yeah, and I mean, that was kind of the route that I ended up taking, Travis, where I went wide receiver heavy with my first 3 picks. I got Julio Jones, and then I have Devontae. I took Devontae Adams with my first round pick. I took Julio Jones with my second round pick, and I also ended up getting AJ Green. I think in the 3rd or 4th round at the time when we drafted. So my wide receivers are hopefully going to look good. Having AJ Green on my bench all year really, really did suck. That was not fun, and that was partially the reason why I didn't invest heavily in running backs, because I knew that their lifespan was pretty short. So this next year it's looking up, because I did take Drake. I was a believer in Kenyon Drake last year, and so that hopefully will pay off for me this next year. And I got Devin Singletary, who I'm going to rely on heavily as well. And then, like I said, I have so many picks bunched in the first round where I'm hoping to grab a running back or 2 that will boost my team up. So I did kind of the opposite of what Big Travie did. But again, you're looking at this, and this is what the big major point that I learned was just, when you're in Dynasty, you got to look at it as more of like a 2 to 3 year span. Because when I initially was thinking about it, I'm like, 5 to 7 years from now, who am I going to want? And that was kind of the wrong mentality to have, because I ended up, taking a couple of guys that I probably shouldn't have taken, because I was like, they're rookies, whatever, and 5 to 7 years are going to be beasts. But it didn't really work out that way for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Johnny. And just to speak back to that career length, hovers around that 3 years. 2 to 3 years is a good point. You have to have that 2 to 3 year plan. And if it's not working after 2 to 3 years, you got to reassess and kind of, go after that. I think, based on what you've said and what we've kind of learned this year, I think wide receiver, getting a little bit more creative with wide receiver, and then, kind of going from there. I need a lot of help. I'll tell you that much. Looking at my roster, I'm not exactly excited, but I think that there are pieces. I think if I can work some trades and really hit the rookie draft well, which is why we talk about getting in there, diving deep into tape, and then sticking with us here on the Dynasty Whispers, because we're going to kind of do our case for rookies, our scouting, our film sessions with you guys over the next few months. And I think you guys can really use this if you're playing Dynasty, or if you're not playing Dynasty, kind of look at what it would look like to do. And if you are a football nut like us, and you're a fantasy football nut like 59 million people are in the U.S. and Canada, then I think you guys are going to really enjoy Dynasty and could really get into it. And why not take a little refresher course or a shadow course, if you will, to get into it. So, Johnny, I think this kind of wraps up our first episode of the Dynasty Whisperers podcast, a faction of the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. And I'm really excited about what we've got coming on for the rest of this offseason. Really excited to get back on the mic with you guys, and really excited that Whisper Nation was here with us. If you guys want to follow the show, as always, or if you have any questions about Dynasty, or about, what platform to use, or a strategy that you're really kind of thinking about before you dive in, hit us up on the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, and leave us a review, or hit us up in our DMs on Instagram at the Fantasy Whisperers. You can also do that there to get a hold of us.
We appreciate you guys so much.
As always, I'm Big Travie. That's Johnny Game Time Hicks, and we are the Fantasy Whisperers, and we're out.
Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.